So I didn't get into like this whole diet movement until maybe a year and a half ago or so. And it sort of made me think back to growing up. And I would really say it started in high school. I know for a lot of people, it probably started a lot younger, which is very understandable, but definitely high school, that's usually when you see changes and all of that, and it carried through college. So also I was taking a lot of dance classes, and you're always looking in the mirror, like all of that stuff. So it sort of got me thinking about kind of how I counsel now, and sort of what I kind of talked myself into doing, and sort of how I talked myself into kind of looking at my body in a different way, and just really sort of viewing it as something that I'm going to have throughout life. So let's love it. Let's be kind to it. Right. And just sort of that's kind of what I want to translate into when I talk to people, either personally or through social media.
So it was through your own experience. So,
Mm-hmm.
and you had said that you've only come to the anti-diet space in the last year and a
Yeah.
half.
Mm-hmm.
So what was it like pre-discovering the anti-diet world?
Yeah, well, in school, so I'm kind of a new dietitian. And in school, and I think with every health profession, honestly, we learn like the standard way of viewing bodies, right? We learn about numbers, BMI, scale, all of that. And so I kind of went through school just studying that because that's what we were told. So I was like, of course it has to be true, right? Um, and so, it really didn't hit me until I was finally a dietitian. And then kind of looking at social media and seeing all of these anti-diet posts, and then reading about books, and then actually reading the books. I really didn't know about things like intuitive eating until like that year and a half ago. And I remember it was through our food and nutrition conference that like all the dietitians go to. And that was the first time I've heard of the concept. And that's sort of what made me kind of spark my interest and look into this a little bit deeper, just because we're not taught that in school. And people are still not being taught that in school. So that's sort of where a lot of weight stigma comes from, because we're taught to view a person as a body size and a number, not really, unfortunately, as a person with other needs. So so I'm new sort of to this, but I love, talking about it as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. And I'm curious if discovering intuitive eating, did that play a role in your own personal healing? Or do you feel like you were at a solid place before that?
Oh no, definitely, even before, like when I learned about intuitive eating, I wouldn't say I was counting calories, but I was definitely one of those people that was like very conscious of what I ate. I'll say that. And, just being a dietitian, of course, people are always looking at your plate, right? We're always being asked what we're eating, or, someone will say, well, what should I eat? And so you're super self-conscious of what, even like talking about food, it's like, okay, is this healthy enough? What am I doing here? So yeah, it definitely helped my own journey, just because I'm thinking, why am I like this? And it really does help when you look at eating as a whole, as a concept, because we're all born intuitive, with the intuitive eating concept. When you look at kids eating, or even babies, they stop when they're full, right? We're not kind of going along with like an app or anything like that. So I just think it's really important for people to kind of look at and rethink, and it helped me. So I think it really does help others as well.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Right on board with
Mm-hmm.
you. So going back to, you had said that in medical school, or I'm sorry, in nutrition
Like
school, being in
nutrition,
nutrition
yeah.
school, yeah, becoming a registered dietitian. I had just interviewed a doctor right before you.
Yeah.
um, that you're taught to look at people's body sizes,
Mm-hmm.
right? And in some framework, a little bit of a dehumanizing way, without being critical or condescending. I think reform in our education system absolutely needs to take place. But I'd love to actually talk a little bit about like health and taking care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't necessarily maybe how they talk about it in school, but like wellness culture, for example. So you had this incredible post on Instagram and you said what society emphasizes for health: apple cider vinegar, organic food, superfoods, fad diets, thin ideals.
Mm-hmm.
And you had said what needs to be addressed for health is poverty, racism, other biases, access to healthcare, access to clean water, social connection, and access to food options.
Mm-hmm.
So not only looking from what you were taught in school, but then also just what we're taught on a population level. Can you explain this a little bit further?
Definitely. And, just to, sorry, just to note, there's so much more because I was looking at some of the comments and I did not expect that post to, to do that, by the way. So I was kind of surprised, but I was glad in a way because that meant that it resonated with a lot of people. And I was looking at some of the comments of that post and people were adding like other things that definitely also are a factor. So yes, I just want to acknowledge, yes, there's so much more. I just have limited space to talk about it on Instagram. But yes, but back to your question. We did like learning. I don't know what doctors, went through with learning, but definitely for nutrition, we had to learn about community nutrition. And all of those things definitely were talked about, but I don't think they were emphasized enough. Just looking at it from, when I was a newbie, an intern and working in a hospital. And, a lot of times you would get a list of patients to go see. You would give them a nutrition counseling, you're like in and out. But the issue that I had was just that whenever I was counseling these people, and this was a community hospital, it was a problem because so many people would say, well, where am I supposed to get these foods? Here I was again being taught that, to look at a person as a number and, counsel them on weight loss and all of these things, but you're not really asking, well, do you have access to food? How are you being treated by society? Are you being stigmatized? Is that affecting your mental health? You're not really asking these questions. So, you're just telling someone, well, eat some kale and you'll be fine. And that's not the case. You have to find out how long it takes someone to get kale. Do they have the money to afford kale? So all of these questions. And I think that kind of what inspired me to do that post also was just that a lot of times people tend to look at celebrities for, or not even celebrities, maybe just like very popular social media handles that aren't too well versed in nutrition. I'm not going to name names, but people probably know like the celebrity I'm talking about. And they always post about, these fad items and food items and all of these things. And, of course, all of it's being sold. But these things aren't, they're not really for the general public. A lot of times they're expensive and also they're unnecessary. I just want to make that also super clear. Like you don't need all of these supplements. Supplements are fine if you want them, but you don't need some of them out there. And when I say supplements, I don't mean vitamins. I'm talking about like the powders and, all of that other fancy stuff. So I think it's just super important for people to address that, just because I don't think it's being addressed enough. And I kind of just made that post just because I saw a new item being put on that website. And I did not expect the post to resonate with so many people. But again, I'm glad it did. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like it goes into privilege to think that it's, about apple cider vinegar and superfoods and all these fancy things where like for a lot of people, health is like, I just need to get my basic needs met. Exactly. And I'm not even getting my basic needs met. And now you're telling me that I need to go buy this $80 adaptogenic powder. Like I can't even get enough food on the table, right? Or I'm working multiple jobs. So I loved that you had that post. I want to go a little further into that. I completely was buckled into the wellness world. I live in Los Angeles. Like I was on the superfood train. I live in LA. I've been here since I was 18. It's like, I feel like, just my opinion, the epicenter of like the wellness thing. You've talked about how superfood is just a buzzword. It's used for marketing. You said superfoods don't exist. Can you explain that a little bit further? And and you've kind of already said this, but maybe there's more,
Mhm.
if we're not needing to take expensive superfood powders and all of these things, how else do we take care of ourselves?
Yeah, superfoods aren't, and I don't even like, honestly, I don't know what I said, but something along the lines of like, it's not that they're super, they don't have powers, they just have marketing, which is fine. Again, if you enjoy that stuff, that's fine. I'm not saying not to have it. I'm just saying it's not necessary. There's a difference, right? And so when you look at these lists of superfoods, one, they always change. So, and there are always these items also that have been around forever. I notice I'm seeing a lot of like things like turmeric, however you want to say it. That spice has been around forever. And so now it's becoming popular. But you have to really acknowledge where it's coming from. The fact that many ethnicities have used this way before it became, marketed. I'll put it that way. And so I think that that's another problem with things like superfoods, chia seeds. Those are very not popular. They're a cultural food for Mexican heritage. That's very rarely acknowledged. And I wish it was. So, that's another issue that I have with superfoods. I feel like that's another podcast episode, but anyway. But yeah, I think that there are definitely ways to optimize your health. Like, I'm a dietitian, of course, I want you to do that. You just don't have to shell out unnecessary money. So, that's kind of what I want to put out there. But I think, for one, not that I'm a fan of saying the word balance, but we definitely need to diversify our palate. I'll say that, or diversify our plate. Sorry. Definitely getting in fruits and vegetables. Like, again, I'm a dietitian, so yes, I want you to eat your fruits and veggies. The thing is that I'm not going to criticize you if your veggies or fruit came from a can or if they're frozen. Because to me, that's still eating vegetables and fruit, which I want you to do. And if that's all you can afford, that's fine. So, that's kind of how I look at it, where yes, vegetables, fruit, whole grains, lean meats like that, those are things that we want. Those are things that we emphasize. It just gets very lost in translation in the diet world, or diet culture world. So that's kind of the issue that I have with it. But yes, like, optimizing your health is really just making sure that your plate is colorful, right? Like, you're getting all of these nutrients in some way, somehow. They just don't have to be superfoods. They can be canned beans, which are still vegetables. So that's the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I was wondering if you had said it's a different podcast, but it's part of the issue with, celebrating, like we
Mhm.
celebrate chia seeds and chia seed pudding and
Exactly.
chia seed water, right? There's sort of this like cultural appropriation and like
Totally.
colonization aspect to these superfoods, right? Like maca, I don't remember
Mhm.
exactly where it's from, but I think it's an Incan superfood.
Mhm.
Is that kind of what you were getting at?
That's what I was getting at. And I didn't, I feel like sometimes I can like ramble about the topic because it's just very, it's sort of infuriating when you see it being posted about this new discovery. And it's like, no, it's new for you. That has been around for many, many years. And is used by many cultures, and the same cultures that are being told that their food isn't healthy. So that's kind of the problem that I have with it, is that we're seeing all of these. I mean, look at avocados. I remember growing up, my dad's Jamaican. He would eat avocados every day. And it wasn't big. And now it's like, it's crazy. They're so expensive, because everyone discovered them now. But those avocados have been around long before they were avocado toast. So that's sort of what I'm getting at. But yeah, it's fine to eat these things. We should be enjoying other cultures and other ethnic foods, but just acknowledge that it was here before you discovered it. So yeah,
Before the fancy marketing.
exactly, that
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's shift gears a little bit. Something you talk a lot about on your Instagram, on your platform, is weight stigma and how
Mm.
it's both a social justice issue and also a public health issue. Why is that?
Weight stigma, it really, so this sort of also ties into the whole concept of, I'm sure by now people have seen the BMI and why we sort of want to get away from that. There's many reasons, and people don't really understand when we say that something is racist or, a stigma. People kind of, they're quick to be defensive. And I 100% am in agreement with saying that not everything stems from racism, but this definitely does when you look at the historical facts about BMI. It was, first of all, it was made by a mathematician, okay, not a physician. And he even said himself that this isn't to be used for any like health reason. So he only, to come up with the formula, he only used white men. So this also excludes women, of any race. So that's like one big red flag, right? Out of many. Another one is that he even said, this is to be used to prove how high up, whites are. And so that's racist, right? So, when we talk about this, I just want people to realize like all of these things stem from sort of a racist platform. And when you really look at how now insurance plans use it as a way to disregard somebody and all of that, you really have to question things. You have to kind of, unfortunately, follow the money. And I'm getting like way off topic here, but BMI, BMI, yes, it's definitely an issue, and it's a social justice issue, just because a lot of times, especially when I was in school, I remember learning about something like diabetes and just being told, yeah, well, Blacks and Latinos, they have high risk of diabetes. That was it. No one ever questioned why. And, so when we look at things, you have to dig deeper. Like, okay, that might be a statistic, but why is that? It's because they're not getting access to healthcare. They're not, they're living in poverty. They're not getting the insurance like other people are getting. So you have to dig deeper. You can't just make statements like, yeah, like, Latinos have high risk of diabetes. Native Americans also have like one of the highest risk factors, but you look at how they're treated. So you have to look at all of these things. And that's kind of why social justice is so important. And I don't think it's talked about enough within the health field. So yeah.
Yeah, I think if we were to really look at these other larger social systems and social structures that are at play, then we would have to do something about it. And we couldn't just like pass on responsibility. And I really think that so many of the powers that be just want to keep the power structure in place. And as opposed to looking at, well, why are they in poverty, right? Like, why are they underinsured? Why do they have limited access to healthcare? Like, those are really big issues that would need to be addressed if you were to actually talk more about it,
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a shame because unfortunately the systems in place are there for a reason. And it's very obvious and very evident that when we, being taught in school, and even as a Black woman, when I was being taught this, like I kind of just went along with it, because you think, well, this is coming from my professor who is like really high up. So you just go along with it, not questioning it. And then then you get to the outside world and you're like, wait a minute, why are these things happening? So it's really important to kind of talk about and get the word out a little bit more. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious, looking back now, like you had said, you were in school and you would just kind of take what they taught you. I think that that's like something that a lot of us do when we're, young and impressionable and we're in school. What do you think would need to happen in order for our education to have more nuance, right? To, what are your thoughts on that? Like, what would it take to get it there? Why is it not there? Just,
Yeah, I mean, I think just more, honestly, I know this is like a big theme, but diversifying leadership is just a very big, I think it's needed, and yes, there are different, BIPOC, right? When we use that term, different ethnicities and roles, but unfortunately, having someone, a person of color, just in charge of diversity and not being included in other discussions, that's still not helping. So you're giving them like these tools just to, kind of make, not real changes. And I think we need to have more people at the table, more women at the table, more, even more like non-binary people, like just more diversity in general is just super important, because these things aren't going to be discussed if they're not being represented by leadership. And by people who can actually make a difference and kind of insert these changes. So there just needs to be more representation.
Yeah, love that. Great answer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so quote from you on your Instagram that I really love. Totally different topic.
Okay.
Totally different topic. You said that happiness is not the absence of problems; it's the ability to deal with them.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean?
Yeah, I mean, I always kind of think, and again, like I just want to make it clear, like I'm not like a therapist or in any way, but this is just based on my experience. I just feel like we're all, well, most of us are adults, right? I'm sure listening to your podcast, most of us are adults. And I just think that with adulthood, and even if you're not an adult, there's always going to be something happening in life. Like life just isn't perfect all the time. And, there's always something big or small. And it's really just the ability to deal with these quote unquote problems or issues, how we do it, or even, dare I say, like making sure you get help when needed. Sometimes for myself, that's one thing I had to learn. I was afraid to ask for help, right? I was just like, no, I can figure it out on my own. I can do this. And it's like, no, sometimes we just need help. And so, no, you're not going to, it's not always going to be happy and, joyful. But, it's really how we deal with it. How are you dealing with it? I talk about self-care a lot too, just because I think that I know it's like a fun media term too, but like it's important to talk about, because a lot of times we aren't doing self-care. Even if we think we are, we're not. So that's what I kind of meant by that quote.
Yeah, no, I loved it. I think probably part of the reason why I pulled it out and wanted to talk about it further is because I find this thing with clients, I hear it quite a bit of they're like, I had a really bad, body image thought today, or like I had this fear of food. And it's like, we have this idea in our brain that like recovery and healing means no more problems. And I'm like,
yeah,
nah, that's not what this means. It means that you learn how to manage your emotions. You learn how to feel them. You learn how to take care of yourself in the midst of them, as opposed to, turning to your maladaptive coping mechanisms that aren't helping you in the long run. So I just love that you brought it up,
Yeah.
So I'm excited to chat with you about this topic. It's about body positivity and celebrity culture. You've talked about this on your Instagram. People in this space, I mean, sure, all celebrities are kind of under a microscope, but many celebrities get a lot of hate when they buy into diet culture and detoxes if they were at some point put on this pedestal as being body positive influences or fat positive influencers, whether they kind of ask for it or not. Like they just get put on this pedestal. So, how can we fight back against, like, take a stand for wanting to not be a part of diet culture, of the toxic nature of diet culture, but then not create more harm for people who, while maybe celebrities, are also in marginalized bodies that are discriminated against. So a little bit of like the dichotomy with Lizzo and what happened like earlier in 2021, I believe it was this year, or was it 2020? I don't remember.
Was it 21? I know, like, right, time is flying by.
Yeah.
Gosh, I felt so bad for her. And it's like she received so much you know, like you said, so much hate, I just want to say. And, you know, when you kind of look at this woman who has so much confidence, and she's just really inspiring to so many people. But the thing is that she never really ever really said that she was this body positive activist. She never said that. She just was a badass. She just is this really great singer who can also play the flute, who is like dancing and all these things. And it's like, but she never said, you know, but we're looking at her as an activist. So I think that was the problem, one. And two, I think people just forget, especially when it comes to celebrities, they're human. I know that it's hard to believe when you're looking at someone who seems untouchable, someone that we don't know, but you know, these people are human, they're people. And you know, one, you're always gonna make a mistake, like no one's perfect. And two, you have to realize that they are still just as, even with all this money and fame, they're just as susceptible to diet culture as us normal people, you know, as was Lizzo. And I know she gave the kind of, I don't want to call it an excuse, you know, but, you know, she kind of explained that she was doing it for her skin, or, you know, but honestly, like that's what people say when they're doing detoxes, and we know that that's not really the whole picture, you know. But again, and I kind of put that in my post, at like, I think it was like 10 p.m. when I was just getting this news, and I kind of like quickly put together a post like, please don't blame her, you know, get mad at diet culture, because once again, diet culture is striking even the most amazing people. It is still striking them down. So it's like, it's not Lizzo or any other celebrity, it's diet culture, you know. And it's tough, because that kind of just goes to show you that this industry just has a hold on so many people. And also, you know, you said celebrity, but also to make it clear, like dietitians, right? We like, especially like us anti-diet dietitians, you know, we also are not perfect, and we go through this all the time as well. Like sometimes there are days that I have where I'm just like, oh boy, you know. So it's hard. That's what I'm trying to say, is that it's not an easy thing to just let go of diet culture. You know, especially when you're under a microscope, it's hard. So I felt for her. I was not upset, and unfortunately I was not surprised. Like you know, I'm not very into celebrity culture, so of course I even got the news late. But I wasn't surprised, unfortunately. I kind of literally thought, diet culture strikes again. That's what I was thinking. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I really love that distinction, you know, of like not blaming the individual, you
Mm-hmm.
know, but really looking at the larger systems and really understanding that this was diet culture at play. What are like what other ways can we really do that? Meaning holding more compassion for somebody who's at the effect of diet culture is under scrutiny. And I feel like in some ways Lizzo can't win. Like she's always, you know, you had that whole Jillian Michaels thing.
Oh
Like
God.
it's like you can't,
That name, I'm just like, ah,
I
yeah.
know she's not a very nice person.
No.
um, you know, it's like, and not even just about Lizzo or just about celebrities, but in our everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
I think something that a lot of people come up against when they just get introduced to intuitive eating and they just get introduced to weight science and weight stigma, a lot of us want to take on. I mean, some of us don't want to take on any type of sharing what we've learned with people because it feels like confrontation. But then others of us get really triggered and like want to like bolster up and be like calling people out. And I think there's a time and a place for calling people out, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
educating, sharing new perspectives. But what could somebody do in their life? Like, how else can they hold diet culture responsible without blaming individuals who've been at the effect of the oppression that it causes?
Yeah, I think just by really acknowledging it, especially on social media, because, you know, let's face it, social media is where most people are. You know, even if you don't have Instagram, you have like some form of social media. And, it's so important when things like this happen, especially one, obviously don't, go directly to Lizzo. I mean, I know she's not really viewing all the comments, she has a team, but she knows about them and they're still hurtful. So one, you're not really helping the situation by getting angry, right? Especially at this individual. Yes, get angry, but not at Lizzo. And it's just so important to really acknowledge, and also, it's really time to also not to like, I'm just bringing it up because you mentioned Jillian Michaels, but she's one of many, honestly, who have these thoughts and views, and they're very problematic. And it's really important. So you see these posts that they're making. So I always suggest to people, don't comment on them just because one, you're making them blow up even more. Two, these people are never going to see your comments. Let's be real. Like Jillian Michaels is not going to answer you. Let's be honest. Right. But I always say, even if you have a small following, make a counter post about why this actually isn't the case. So let's talk about Lizzo doing the detox diets. Don't, post about that. Why don't you post about, hey, this is why detox diets don't work. You don't need them. You have a liver, whatever you want to say. That's what I suggest, just because the more I've just noticed that people tend to go directly to the source. And in most cases, these sources are huge. They're not going to answer you. You're just blowing up their presence even more, believe it or not. So that's kind of my theory. That's what I do. I tend to make counter posts because I don't, I try to stay away from the drama that way. But yeah, that's sort of my theory. And I think it works. Just, there are people that need to see it, and there's just other ways to go about it.
I think that's a great practical tip. Like I know lots of other health coaches or aspiring health coaches or online people who want to build an online presence like that. They're listening. And that's a really great tip, is when you see something that you're triggered by or you don't agree with, instead of getting all trolly in the comments.
Exactly.
Express yourself, on your own feed. I love that.
Yeah, because even like, just honestly, even for people that that don't have big followings, or even if your comment is right, it's definitely correct, it's still not really helping to get into an argument. It's just not, even if you technically aren't a troll, it's just not helping. So it's always easy to like make your own and just give reasons why. So that's my tip.
Yeah, it's great. I'm curious of your thoughts on, and this is just a question on the cuff.
Mm-hmm.
We had talked about, holding compassion for Lizzo and not blaming her for being at the effect of diet culture, being influenced by it. What about people like Jillian Michaels, who are super steeped in it? What do you say?
I still don't think it's a good idea to go like directly like on her page and comment. It's because the thing with people like that, honestly, they have to want to see the difference and want to change themselves. I don't agree with her at all. In any way, I just want to make that clear. Like, I'm not a sympathizer. I don't agree with her tactics at all. I just feel like it's not productive to go to her because, this woman, she's never going to see my comment. And plus, let's be honest, her whole platform, she sells her workouts, she sells books. I don't know if she still had this, but she like has pills, all of these things. And, that's her income. So, I don't think that that's going to change anytime soon. I mean, I think that she could do wonders by like really investing in this new idea of like HAES or intuitive eating or whatever you want, for sure. But I just think that people like that, unfortunately, they have to want the change themselves. Like, even for someone like myself, I wasn't automatically into the anti-diet world. I wasn't, because I was still thinking about what I was taught in school. When I first learned about health at every size, I laughed. I was like, you got to be kidding me. and then look at me now, that's all I talk about. So I think it's just, you have to want to change. You have to be open to wanting new information, because there's really no other way. I see even on Twitter, other dietitians who are very dismissive of haze and, all of that. I see their posts, and it's just it's sad because they talk about, well, it's not based in science. I'm like, actually it is. You're just not reading it. So it drives me crazy too when they say that, like, I'm evidence-based. I'm like, haze and intuitive eating are also evidence-based. Like, you're just not reading it. So yeah, so that's, unfortunately, I don't think I have a great answer to that. I just feel like you have to be open to change.
I think that was a great answer.
Oh, thank you.
Totally. Because I agree with you. I think that if you're not willing to look at other information that doesn't confirm your already existing bias, you're talking to a freaking brick wall. But if someone is like, hey, I'm open to considering the possibility that this.
Exactly, consider.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's all we're asking for. Yeah.
And I was the same way. The first time I read Health at Every Size, I had a lot of resistance. Like when I was reading it, I was like, because it challenged everything that I was led to believe.
Exactly. So I get it. Like when someone, not I don't have sympathy for trolls, but when I see like I'll call them real people, my fellow dietitians who are very smart, but when I see them like kind of disregarding it or even criticizing it, I'm just like, oh, I used to be you too. I understand. It takes time, so
yeah, time and willingness,
exactly.
Yeah. It makes me think of in Florence Given's book, You Don't Owe the World Pretty, or Women Don't Owe You Pretty. Mm-hmm. She has like in the very beginning of the book, like, don't criticize people for something you just unlearned, and so I think that's a continual process for me, is to like be compassionate to people who don't have the information that I at one point didn't have either, know? Yeah.
Totally.
Okay. So, shifting gears here again, I feel like we're zigzagging along. Food insecurity and access to fresh foods is a huge issue in our culture. So we touched upon that a little bit at the beginning. But what advice do you give to those feeling guilty for using economical or convenient options like canned, frozen, and packaged foods, or people that eat at fast foods? You did touch on this a little bit, but can you go a little bit deeper there? Like, I think even people who have access, who have more of that privilege, still feel guilty about it. So
yeah, and that's why I post about it. Not I won't say a ton, but I try to do it often as possible, just as a reminder, because there is this sort of guilt that comes with society. I know also with that, a lot of moms also come to me and they're just like, oh my gosh, I feel so guilty because I gave my child like canned food or, non-organic or whatever it is. And there's a lot of like mom shaming and all of that. So, it really helps, I think, a lot of people just to know that it's okay. So I just want to make it clear, like there's a lot of mistrust with our government. And I get that you have to be, like you can't just like willingly trust everyone, but I just want to say our food is very safe. Like our government, I know this is hard to believe, but they're not like letting you just eat anything. So, and people don't understand all the little nuances around why, we're allowed to eat. Like they're going to just say, because I've seen this post floating around how there's arsenic in chicken. And it's like, no, that's not totally correct. And plus, there's regulation. So I just think there's a lot of misunderstandings, and which is fine, but you have to really acknowledge those misunderstandings. And especially I'm not on TikTok, but I've seen like a lot of TikTok videos where people are like posting about what's in baby food or what's in like the US version. What did that girl say? It was like the US version of, I think, Doritos, and like the UK version, and how our version is unhealthy and it's not true. And so basically, back to your question, what I'm trying to say is that we really shouldn't feel guilty, because one, you need to find ways to nourish yourself. That's always important, whether it's the type of foods that you eat, but also the way you access them. Two, like frozen foods, canned foods, like they're not I'm going to just, this is going to sound weird, but to me, like they're not advertised as being like sexy enough. Like, oh, you got your food from a can. Like, yes, I did. It saved time. There's nothing wrong with that, So I feel like that's also why like we're always talking about fresh is best, and not always, fresh isn't best if it's sitting in your fridge because you haven't used it. Like if you had some frozen vegetables, they would last longer. So it's really about understanding how to nourish your body, but also how to take advantage of the convenience, whatever that means for you, access wise, whatever it is. There shouldn't be shame around that, for sure.
Yeah, totally. And like frozen food is frozen at the peak of its ripeness,
Exactly.
and its freshness. I used to own a restaurant actually, and I hired a chef to come and like train me and consult me because I had left a law firm. Like I had no business being in or buying a restaurant. I mean, it all worked out great and all. But I hired this consultant and he actually told me this because I had the perception, again, I was super steeped in wellness culture, fresh is best. You got to get fresh everything. And he was like, well, if you're buying meat, you need to get the frozen stuff because it's frozen at the peak of its like, butchering or whatever. And same thing with some of whatever variety of products and stuff. He was like, it's actually going to be better quality if you don't get everything fresh. Exactly. And that was like a radical thought for me. And it's not even about health and nutrition. It was just like in terms of
science,
it was just the best thing on the plate for your peaks. Yeah. And so, there's a lot of examples where aside from the convenience and just, consistently and adequately nourishing your kids and yourself is hugely important, if it's not always fresh foods, but are you able to even eat consistently? I think that's huge,
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So one more fun little question before we wrap up here. What are you most excited about in your life right now?
Ooh, definitely. I think just finding ways to be more accessible to people. Like I'm trying to build, well, not really, I don't want to make it sound like I'm trying to build an empire, but just like finding ways to just be, more accessible. Like, yes, I have my social media, but also I really do like the counseling that I do, and just really, I love seeing the change, like in clients, whenever they come back to me and they're just like, oh my goodness, my views have totally shifted for whatever reason, especially when I work with someone who is recovering from like an eating disorder. It just always like makes me so happy when people are just like, I ate this and I'm okay. And so I just, finding ways like that excites me, about finding ways to just reach more people because, in our little world, like in social media, I think that we think that this anti-diet movement is big, but it's not, it's there's still so many people who are saying the opposite. So I think that it's just really important to find outlets and to reach more people and just to spread the word that eating should be fun. You can literally eat anything that you want to, that is good for you, that, obviously I have my saying, eat anything as long as you're not allergic to it, or, medical reasons, whatever, but you can have whatever you want. So I think that's really important. And I'm excited about like sharing more of that as much as possible.
Yeah, awesome. Shana, this has been so great. It's been so awesome to chat with you. If people want to connect with you, if they even want to learn about working with you, how do you work with people? Where can they find you? Where can they connect with you?
Yeah, so my Instagram, Facebook, Twitter is all the Nutrition Tea. Pretty easy to find because my website is also thenutritiontea.com. So I'm very easy to to remember also. So definitely feel free to reach out. And, of course, on all my handles, my website and my contact info is listed. So any questions or anything like that, that's where I can be reached.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Shana.
Thank you.
I hope you got so much value out of this conversation with Shana. Thank you so much for listening to the Love Your Bod Pod, and be sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on future episodes.